Now we're recording.
Uh-huh.
Welcome in.
That's my only job.
That's right. The podcast is going to get a little bit of a chop there. So let me say hello again to everybody. I forgot to hit record up front. Hello, everybody. Welcome into another Jew and Gentile podcast. We've got a great show lined up for you. Hey, you know where we are? We are in our new studio, Steve.
Well, we're in our new place where we do podcasts.
That's right.
I'm reluctant to call it a studio.
That's exactly right. It's our podcast room.
That is correct.
I apologize. It's our podcast room. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We got a great show lined up for you. We're going to be continuing our study in the book of Ruth. But, Steve, before we get to all of the fun stuff, why don't you tell us where you've been? You've been traveling a little bit. You've been traveling a lot lately, actually.
Oh, yeah, a little bit. I was at a pastor's conference, a group of Bible churches in a rural area right on the tri-state area of Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Maryland. And I have to tell you, the Lord taught me a lesson, Chris. I have to say that I was reluctant at a camp to wear a tie. I just didn't want to do it.
Well, camp and tie don't necessarily sound like something that they go together, you know?
And I asked the person who was in charge, I want to be proper, what's the attire? And he said, we don't have a special attire. We leave it up to the individual. But he said, I can only tell you that every speaker is going to have a tie on. And I said, oh, man, at camp. So to myself, well, the Lord taught me a lesson, Chris. I'm coming out of Chili's on Sunday, and I'm with the couple who were gracious enough to host me, and I'm coming out, and a man comes up to me and says, oh, wait, stop. I want to shake your hand. So I said, oh, okay. And so he said, I see you're wearing a tie. I know you were at church. He said, you're at church. We know that you're not going to the mall.
With a tie on.
That's right. And so I looked up and said, Lord, I'm sorry. I reminded myself my own people were in the book of Exodus complaining, and I was complaining in my heart just over a tie, and a guy said, my name is J.T. King, and he had a tie.
You remember his name, too.
Well, because I said, oh, who am I shaking hands with? He said, my name is J.T. King. He said it I said, whoa, okay. Well, I'm Steve.
But you had a great time at that camp. You talked all
fabulous.
Prophecy.
We talked Third Temple.
Wow.
Temple. The ashes of the red heifer. Are they importing stones from Indiana for the temple? Of course, that's not true, but there were rumors. Do they have the ashes of the red heifer? How many temples are there? When are they going to be rebuilt? Do we have to have a temple in order for the tribulation to begin? All these kinds of questions. It was wonderful. We had a great time.
And you're also getting ready in tomorrow or Friday?
Tomorrow.
You're going to Israel.
No, actually Friday. Today's Wednesday. I'm kind of messed up because we normally do our podcast on Thursday.
That's right.
And today is Wednesday. So it is Friday. I'm taking off from being in the office. That's why we're podcasting today. And leaving Friday, Chris. What a time it's going to be.
You're going to have a great time. You know, I was talking with a colleague who's going to Israel with you all, and he was just saying how much he's looking forward to. It's probably not that busy in Israel right now, so you're going to almost have some of these sites to yourself, which, you know, over the years, up till 2019, I remember going over and feeling like you're crammed in. There's so many tourists coming to Israel, and it really, I think 2019 was a peak year for Israeli tourism.
4.5 million people in 2019.
And you felt it when you were in Jerusalem, and you felt
100%.
it when you were at Caesarea, and you felt it when you were at Sea of Galilee. And now it's picking back up again, but you're kind of getting that. You'll have it'll be a little more quiet, it seems like.
Chris, it's like me getting up in the morning. You know, when I get up in the morning, oh, man, this hurts and that hurts, and I start real slow. Well, going back to Israel, and in fact, tourism in Israel is kind of like being an old man.
Yeah.
It's going to be a few people. It's going to be slow. But once I get going and everything's kind of lubricated a little bit, you're moving around, I think that's the way it's going to be. It's going to come back, but it's going to take a little bit of time.
It's going to be a great trip, I think, Steve. I think it's going to be a good time for you and everybody. And I know our executive director, Dr. Jim Showers, has been very anxious to get back to Israel. It's been too long for him.
And Chris, you and I are going to podcast. I don't know. You're going to figure it out. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I just know I'm going to get on my computer and I'm going to talk to you, and it's somehow going to be on. We're going to be doing Ruth chapter 4.
That's right.
From Israel.
I'm going to pipe you right in. It's going to be like you're sitting across the table from me. It's going to be great.
I'll miss you, Chris, but I will say Jerusalem, Chris. Jerusalem, Chris.
I totally understand. I feel no ill will toward that statement whatsoever.
It's from good to great. You're good. Israel's great.
That's right. Well, why don't we do Ruth chapter 4? Steve, Ruth chapter 3. And Steve, as you're going there, I just want to remind our listeners that currently we are in our FOI Equip class, Anti-Semitism, Past, Present, and Future. Ty Perry is teaching it. It's just a fresh reminder, too, that this whole podcast, the Jew and Gentile podcast, is sponsored by FOI Equip. All of this is designed that, number one, you can enjoy the conversation that Steve and I have.
That's one way to describe it.
Yeah, I enjoy it. I mean, it's always fun for me, you know. I hope it's fun for our listeners. But also to remind you that on Thursday nights, you can join a free live online class, and we have so many options now available. On Thursday night, tomorrow night, Ty Perry's going to be wrapping up a 3-week series that he's been doing on anti-Semitism, past, present, and future. You can still register it and catch the last class. I promise you it'll be worth your while. You can register by going to FOI, as in Friends of Israel, FOI Equip. .org. You'll find his class there. And then also I want to encourage you to go to foiequip.org, because there you can register for our upcoming spring feast classes that's going to be taught by Cameron Joyner. He's going to be spending 2 weeks talking about Passover, unleavened bread, the Feast of Weeks, Shavuot, all these great spring feasts from the book of Leviticus, what they mean to, what they meant for the Israelites, what they meant for Jesus in his time, and what they mean for us today as well.
But not only that, Chris, I'd like you to tell them, if they go to foiequip.org, they don't only have to register. I mean, they can register. We want them to register. It's a great place to register. But there are little tags at the top, and they could go back to all the other classes. There's videos from YouTube. There's recorded Equip classes as well. And they can have their pick of whatever interests them. Aren't I right?
All of our classes are recorded and stuck on YouTube, and you can go back if you're interested in wanting to see Steve's class that he did on the fall feast of Israel, or you want to listen to how the significance of Hanukkah, the story of Hanukkah. We have so many classes right now built out for you to just go log on to YouTube, and you'll be able to watch them all. They're all available for you, and you can find access to that by going to foiequip.org.
I just found that's a relatively new site that just happened a few weeks ago, and I find when I go on there, it's so easy to access all the other things. So yes, it's the place to register, but also a place to get older material that could be relevant, including the Jew and the Gentile podcast.
You can go and listen to the Jew and Gentile podcast right at foiequip.org. Go there, people. Go there. Hey, so Steve, we're talking about Ruth, and can I just say before we get into Ruth chapter 3, this is a transitional book of the Bible. This is transitional in the sense that we're transitioning from Ruth or from the point in the time period of the Judges. And Ruth is this 4-chapter book that's kind of the bridge between how God was using the Judges to correct Israel's waywardness, if you will, to the period of the Kings. And so that becomes important because now all of a sudden we're talking about Ruth building this bridge between Judges, and then we're going to see at the very end of chapter 4 of Ruth that it's leading us to the kings of Israel, a different way that God is going to speak to his people and connect with his people. And so this is a nice bridge book, and we're in the middle of this story now. It's a love story, as you were talking about, Steve.
It is a love story. And it's a story that's a redemptive story, and it's a story that is on the harvest. It's a story that we get to see the kinsman redeemer. And Chris, sometimes it's hard for people, including me. You say, I read the Old Testament, and okay, I know it happened. There are historical people that are important, but how's this relate to me? Kinsman Redeemer, it really is going to relate to us. It relates to the ongoing story of the Bible, following the seed of Genesis chapter 3, to the monarchy that you just described. And we're going to see the joy of dating.
Biblical dating, right?
Biblical dating. It is a love story, and it puts a smile. At least it puts a smile on my face.
Yeah, and that's why we're kind of in the middle of this love story now, because chapter 1 sets up the tension, or sets up the dilemma. The dilemma in chapter 1 is that Ruth and Naomi lost their husbands. Naomi is Ruth's mother-in-law. They lost their husbands. There was bitterness, there was sadness over the situation, and this was an opportunity for Ruth to break away from her mother-in-law and to go do what she needed to do to survive, and she didn't. She stuck with Naomi, which you could almost say could almost become like an anchor, not something that could propel her into life, but now she's following a woman there's no hope in, if by Ruth staying with Naomi, it only kind of, it could have set her up for disaster and not success. But yet she stayed faithful to her. Chapter 2 sets up the love story between Boaz and Ruth, and there's that kind of love tension that's there. We're getting that, part of the movie where you're getting the butterflies. And now we're moving into like a serious moment where I guess they have a kind of a conversation about where they stand with one another in Ruth chapter 3.
It is amazing. And I don't think we should be afraid here. Ruth converted. That conversion, she left her pagan culture because of Naomi's testimony, even though Naomi felt she was now Mara, bitter. And she said, your people will be my people. Your God will be my God. I'm going with you, no matter how hard it gets. She was forsaking the old life and venturing on to the new. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we should be scared of that word. From my background, the word conversion is a real negative word. But here we can see the actual definition. Ruth left what she knew to follow the God of Naomi. And it's a great story.
I don't mean to segue here, but I'm interested in your thoughts on the word conversion when it comes to maybe like a Jewish person when it comes to Jesus. Is it a conversion or is it, Jesus is Jewish? How does that play? It's not like we're asking them to jump ship and, become a Muslim or become, sometimes I think we forget our roots are firmly planted in the Jewishness of the Bible. In Jesus is Jewish. It's not like, so do you see where I'm going with this?
Absolutely.
Conversion.
And
is that a right
I really
word?
appreciate the question. It takes me back in my mind because my presupposition, anybody that would become a Christian, and I heard about it back when I was growing up, but that was a terrible thing, a shanda. Mm-hmm. We use that Yiddish word, a terrible thing, that they would forsake their background. Well, Chris, when I first was confronted through the ministry of Friends of Israel, I realized very quickly they weren't asking me to forsake my background. In fact, the people at the Bible study for Friends of Israel, they wanted to learn about the Jewish people. They wanted to know about Jesus' Jewish background, and instead of forsaking it, they would talk. Back then, the talk was, you complete being Jewish. You found the fulfillment of being Jewish. You embrace who you are, and I can say honestly that I'm more interested in Jewish things as a believer than I was as a young 22-year-old before I was a believer.
Because Jesus brings the fulfillment of all those things, and the true meaning of them.
And almost every Jewish believer that you talk to, and Jewish people who see other Jewish believers say, you know what? I understand you embraced it. And they will say, I know it was said of you, Chris. You've met Jewish people, and they said to you, Chris, you're more Jewish than I am.
Yes.
Why is that?
Yes.
Because we're interested in the Jewish Messiah.
That's exactly right. And the Jewish Messiah brings the full, what's the word I'm thinking of? He enhances the idea of what it means to understand the Jewishness of the Bible.
He
completes it. That's exactly right. And so that's why I was wondering the word conversion. It's one thing when a Gentile pagan or, converts to Christianity.
She forsook.
That's right.
Everything.
She was a Moabite.
Hey, you just said I taught for Equip I taught my own Jewish feasts.
That's right.
Hanukkah, we celebrate Hanukkah. You and I celebrated Purim.
That's right.
Right on the Jew and the Gentile podcast. So, no, we embrace those things because God, through the Lord Jesus Christ, has completed what he started.
That's right. So Ruth chapter 3, Naomi is involved here, Steve. So it says,
that's right.
She says, it says in verse 1, one day Ruth's mother-in-law Naomi said to her, "My daughter, I must find a home for you where you will be well provided for." So again, she cares about Ruth's welfare. I can't stress this enough. I've said it over and over as we've been studying Ruth, the Jew and the Gentile, studying the Jew and the Gentile, Ruth and Naomi. It's welfare. And she has welfare for her daughter-in-law, and she wants to make sure that her daughter-in-law is taken care of because her daughter-in-law forsook, a lot to follow her back to Bethlehem.
Well, listen, in a Yiddish accent, she'd say, "Look, darling, I'm going to help you. I want to take care of you. I love you. And so just listen to me. Just listen to me, and you'll be okay." It's true, and it was true.
Yeah, and that's when she said to her, "My daughter, I must find you a home for you, for where you will be well provided for." Now Boaz, with whose women you have worked, is a relative of ours.
Of course he is.
That's right. Bada bing, bada boom. And tonight he will be winnowing barley at the threshing floor. I love this. This is perfect. Wash. Put on some perfume and get dressed in your best clothes.
A little makeup, it won't hurt.
That's right. It's right out of a television show.
Absolutely.
Then go down to the threshing floor, but don't let him know that you are there until he has finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, note the place where he is lying, then go and uncover his feet and lie down. He'll tell you what to do.
Well, Chris, let's make sure that we are clear. This is a cultural practice. It sounds kind of weird,
sketchy.
It's sketchy, and would we in 21st century want our daughters to do this practice? It carries with it stuff that we're not familiar with. But back then, this was perfectly respectable.
Yeah, this is a very normal way of we call it dating, but this was the way that I guess a woman showed interest in a man, and a man would respond, and it's interesting because, men typically are told in our culture, you go and you go, tell the woman that, hey, would you like to go on a date? Or, I hear these stories today of, kids texting. Hey, you want to go out with me? I'm texting. I mean, I wish I had it that easy, face to face. You have intimidation, you have to feel that feeling of rejection. Well, here it seems like it's flipped, that the woman is going to Boaz and saying, hey, I hear we're relatives. So
that's right.
Yeah.
And that's the whole purpose here, raising up seed to Naomi's husband and her sons. So that this seed comes through Naomi, and this tradition or this culture, this practice was a normal practice. And Naomi told her, he'll know what to do.
Yeah.
At the right time, he'll know exactly what to do.
So that's what happens. It says, "I will do whatever you say." And Ruth answered. So she went to the threshing floor and did everything that her mother-in-law told her to do. And when Boaz had finished eating and drinking, and was in good spirits. So he's feeling good.
Give him a lot of carbs that makes him kind of sleepy.
That's right.
A way to a man's heart's through his stomach.
He's feeling good. He's worked a hard day. He went over to lie down at the far end of the grain pile. Ruth approached quietly, uncovered his feet, and laid down. In the middle of the night, something startled the man. He turned, and there was a woman lying at his feet.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Who are you?
Yeah, exactly. I'm just trying to get some rest
where
here.
Where am I? What is going on here?
That's right. My mother-in-law sent me. That's
right. Man.
So what, Steve, there's a lot of cultural significance to this, but the idea is that there is some pursuing going on here, and Boaz appreciates it. That's the big point.
In fact, he says so, Chris. In verse 10, he said, "Blessed are you of the Lord, my daughter, for you have shown more kindness at the end than at the beginning, in that you did not go after young men, whether poor or rich." He must have been older, and now he knows this practice. He's saying, man, you're at my feet. You're you're interested in me. This is amazing. And so he said, you could have gone after younger men, but you went after me. And now, my daughter, don't fear. Everything's going to be fine. Just like Naomi thought.
Yes.
She gave her the instructions. I will do for you all that you request. For all the people of my town know that you are a virtuous woman. So important that the Holy Spirit put this in because of the culture we live in. This was a virtuous thing to do.
And again, the idea that the town already knew, I don't think she's been there for a long time, but the town already had an idea that, Ruth is somebody different. She's a Moabite, of course, but she's virtuous, and she loved her mother-in-law and stayed faithful to her mother-in-law. And so they all knew that. And so that also landed with Boaz.
Well, I think they noticed Boaz was making sure in chapter 2 that, she was taken care of from the gleaning.
Yes.
And so, hey, make sure you leave a little extra there for her. So you could see just the beginning to birth, and now it's becoming even stronger.
He goes on, he says, although it is true that I am the guardian redeemer of our family, there is another who is more closely related than I. So this becomes some tension for us in the story of Ruth as well.
That's right. Somebody else had a shot.
That's right, because there's some love. You technically didn't have to love the person to enter into this marital relationship. Remember, this was the welfare system. This woman lost everything. God provided a way for her to marry the next in line, a brother, a kinsman, a family member that's closest to the person, to her husband, to keep her safe, to keep her protected, cared for, as Naomi was saying.
He had a purchase. There had to be he had to have the ability to take care of her. There was a purchase price, if you will.
But that closest kinsman had to cancel that, essentially, because a part of the law was it had to go to him first. And so there's some tension here. It's not as easy as we want it to be.
Not at all. There's a chance that the other person will say, hey, I see Ruth too. I'm interested. And then Boaz would have had to step aside, even though the two of them, it seemed, had eyes for each other. That doesn't matter. The law trumps the emotion here.
Yes. And so you can also see, which I think is really interesting, is to see how the law does play out in culture. The law does work its way out where they could go, let's just get married. Let's skip all the details, the technicalities of the law, but that they were still willing